Welcome to another edition of Speak Up Presents. Today we're going to talk about the All-American City Awards that took place in Tampa in June and some of the fabulous ideas that were presented at this award. We have with us, very fortunately today, Bob Buckhorn from Buckhorn Partners. Thank you for joining us, Bob. Wayne Garcia from Creative Loafing. Thank you for being here, Wayne.
Good to be here.
And Sandy Freedman, our former mayor and the chair of the National Civic League during this time and continuing. Is that just for those?
I'm in it for the long haul.
The long haul. Sandy, I know National Civic League's an old organization that has been doing this for a long time, and could you give a little background to the viewers about the group?
The National Civic League was started by Teddy Roosevelt and a group of progressives in the late 1800s and is celebrating this year the 60th anniversary of the All-American City Award, which is one of the things that it sponsors. It does some other wonderful work around the country helping communities solve their problems and recognizing teachers and principals and the MetLife Awards. But this is a major, major project of the National Civic League.
So its mission is to share knowledge?
It's sharing knowledge, but it's really about civic democracy and helping citizens become better citizens and helping in their neighborhoods, their communities, and their country.
And this, so this year it was held in Tampa, and well, we won it one year when you were mayor, didn't we?
We won it in 1990, and
what was the? How did we win it? What was the program that you?
There were. You have to apply with 3 programs. It's a very rigorous application process, purposely rigorous, so that you really do some self-reflection on your community and what's good and what needs to be improved. And the year that we won it, we applied with 3 programs, 2 of which are still in existence. One is the Quad Squad, which is the police and the community working together to eliminate street-level drug sales, and that one still continues. Paint Your Heart Out Tampa, which still continues and has had its 20th anniversary last year.
Which is a project that helps the
paints homes of low income and senior citizens, and over 100 homes roughly each year get painted for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to get their property fixed up. And it links the citizens and businesses with neighborhoods that they may not have experienced, and it really causes some wonderful things to happen even after that for those residents. And then the final project was a code enforcement project called Peer to Peer, which, interestingly enough, I think might be recreated. The city is interested in, once again, starting that project up where the neighborhood, as opposed to the government, lets the citizens who have code enforcement problems know firsthand about correcting the problems, and government doesn't have to step in. And we used to have about an 80% compliance just by peer-to-peer recognition of the problem and then taking care of the problem, and government never had to get involved.
So this year, Tampa again applied. You did some wonderful articles about this, some blogging about it. What was Tampa's role in this year?
Well, Tampa was the host city this year, and they held it at the Marriott Waterside. And I think this is the second year that Tampa had the event. And you know what happens is all of the cities and their delegations. There were 29 involved. I think 30 finalists. 29 of them came here. So they bring all their delegations. So there were, I think, around 800 people involved in this. The various cities, and you know, they get to network. They get to see the programs that the other cities are doing, and I saw a lot of people just, you know, sharing ideas, sharing hugs. It's a celebration of what they've done in their civic community to build it, and it's also a chance to learn. It's a chance to get a pat on the back. It's all of those things. It's very feel good, but the ideas were tremendous, and so you know, Tampa was the host, and then somewhat by coincidence, because the host doesn't automatically get to be a finalist, they did enter, and they were one of the finalists as well.
Did you attend, Bob?
I was there for parts of it, Louise.
Yeah. So you saw some of the presentations, and we have some of them right here.
Well, the All-American City Award is kind of unique in that it's really awarded to entire communities, not just to government, not just to individuals, not just to organizations, but really what it shows and demonstrates is that a community has a lot of civic spirit, and that they engage the ordinary people in public problem-solving decision-making. Communities get pretty excited about it. They take the competition part of it very seriously and try to do the best job they can in these presentations. But it's really about substance. It's the substance of each community has 3 projects. We want to show that those projects make a real difference and that they've also been inclusive, that everybody's sort of involved and it's not a top-down program, but something that really percolates up from the bottom. Our roots go back to the progressive era and the municipal reform movement, and used to be the organization was very much focused on government organization, local government reform. We are the organization that created the City Manager Council form of government. We put out the Model City Charter. But about, I'd say sometime in the early 80s, late 70s, we began to really think about our mission in a broader sense of not just what government's doing, but what the whole community's doing. And civic engagement, citizen involvement, these are really important to us. We're trying to make sure that communities all over the country know how to tap into the potential of ordinary citizens to use that sort of public intelligence to make policy, to make decisions, to solve problems.
Well, when I became mayor, it was important for me to make sure that Phoenix led in education, and that education, as my grandpa taught me, is the key to the future. And so downtown was also an important part of any community, and especially Phoenix, but it had never really taken off in all its years. So what I did was combine Arizona State University's need for new space to expand from its suburb of Tempe, the largest public university in the country, to downtown Phoenix in the heart of the core of downtown where there was available land. The citizens passed a bond initiative. We sketched it out on a napkin over coffee one day, and then 5 short years later, it's been such an amazing success, not only educating students in journalism and nursing and public administration, biotech, but also creating an environment in downtown that became a 24/7, which drove the economy downtown for needs for more businesses, boutiques, restaurants, certainly bars, but also just the businesses to supply a business called the University of 7,000 students and faculty. So it's been a phenomenal success. Directly and indirectly, with construction, that 70,000 jobs a year have benefited, at least as a result of Arizona State University's presence. And then, because of that, we were able to attract University of Arizona, which is 120 miles to the south, to bring its medical school downtown onto the campus. We now have the pharmacy school from U of A, the medical school, the nursing school from ASU, bioinformatics from ASU, and TGen, our scientific research center, all on one campus. And so we had over 800 residents on the bond committee that decided what would go on the ballot and ended up campaigning for that. So the very people that were voting for or against the bond committee actually decided to now lead this bond committee. And as a result, the bonds passed overwhelmingly. Every one of the 13 categories passed. In fact, we're the first city in the country to have used our own funds to build public universities and high schools, by the way, with the support of the people. We think this is the best investment that anyone can make is in public infrastructure. And in fact, President Obama, is unfortunately in a different economic climate that we're all participating in, but has the same principle. Our public dollars should be used not only to create jobs, but build assets for the future. And that's what Phoenix has always done. So we invest in universities, we invest in roads, we invest in libraries, senior centers, water treatment plants that will be used for generations to come. And then we make that case publicly. We don't try to do it in the back room. So we involve the public. And in fact, since 1954, the city of Phoenix has about a 95% passage rate in bonds. And since I've been mayor for the last almost 6 years, we've had 3 sales tax elections. All of them have passed overwhelmingly. One dedicated to police and fire, one dedicated to our parks, and one dedicated to the operations of some of our important infrastructure projects. So there were sales tax increases and property tax increases, but they both have brought about an economy that certainly when the national economy recovers, we'll be moving much faster and much higher in terms of going forward. But also right now, it's minimize the negative impact of this recession by creating micro positive economic climates.
Mayor of Phoenix talked to us about moving these universities downtown. Now, we've got that here in Tampa. Let's talk about this a little bit, but it seems like maybe they're making more progress out of it.
Well, I think they are, and one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to the mayor of Phoenix, and we highlighted him also in our coverage in Creative Loafing, was that I was intrigued by what education spending, infrastructure, colleges, higher education downtown in Tampa could mean. I just finished up a master's degree at USF St. Petersburg, and even just that little engine in St. Pete puts students on the ground downtown. They're eating, they're drinking, they're socializing, supporting restaurants, supporting bars, which then are supporting jobs in which other people can then live there, and it grows and grows and grows. And we do have a little bit of that in Tampa. We have a law school, sort of a law school annex, but it's not as well connected to the rest of downtown, and there hasn't been a whole lot, I guess, until the Heights project really gets going. It's not as well connected as say, a major campus. And so if you were to use the old Central Park, neighborhood or some other areas for larger campuses, what could you attract? Could you do a major biomedical campus like they've done here? Already USF has partnered with Tampa General, and a lot of their programs and a lot of their surgery and a lot of their residencies. Could you do that here? What would that mean? And what if you did try to do it? Who would you bring in? Do you bring in USF from here or UCF for this program?
Don't we have a part of USF's campus down here? Don't they have something
in Channel
down
Side?
there?
There's a small
Some
segment
program,
in Channel
right?
Side.
And then we have University of Tampa right here, but
And we have
okay, they're like around.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on the campus right now.
The USF Physicians Group has a building on the Tampa General facility, on the campus itself. I know because my wife practices there, but I think what you saw with Mayor Gordon, and I think what you'll see throughout all of these presentations, is it is really a seamless effort. The business community, the political leadership, the grassroots community are one. Virtually all these projects that we're going to hear about today came as a result of sort of it growing from the grassroots up. But it wasn't pitting faction against faction. They were all together. And just as the academic leadership obviously partnered with Mayor Gordon in Phoenix, the business community was a big part of that. I mean, I will give you a great example. It's the most telling example that I've ever seen. My wife came to me the other day, and a young medical student had come to her and was choosing between going to USF Med School or going to University of Central Florida, which is a relatively new medical school. The University of Central Florida was going to pay not only her tuition for 4 years, but give her a stipend of $20,000 a year as well. That was raised by the business community in Central Florida, who understood that if they could create that synergy, if they could create that nexus, that if they could create that academic institution, not only were they going to keep those doctors once they graduated, but that was an investment in the economic health of their community, and they stepped up to the plate to the tune of about $1 billion to make sure that not only that they got a medical school, but they attracted the best and the brightest because they were willing to help these kids pay their way. And that young lady chose the University of Central Florida over USF. Shame on us. But we absolutely could and should be doing exactly what Mayor Gordon did in Phoenix.
What do you think, Skinny?
I think what happens in communities that are really successful, like Phoenix, which has had a really good track record for many years on a bunch of projects, is that there's a total buy-in by everybody in the community. It's not just government going to do it. A politician doesn't say, I'm going to do that, and then it just happens. They get everybody at the table. And it's not just the business leaders and the government and the universities. It's the average citizen. That's what the National Civic League is all about. Engaging that average citizen who may not have a day-to-day involvement with government into the process and making sure that everybody who's a stakeholder, the businesses, the government, the citizens, the education systems, the school system, what have you, they're all there, they're all on the same page, they're all walking down the road together, and everybody is looking toward the end of the day where they're all successful. I think oftentimes what happens in politics, and I can speak with some experience, and perhaps I've been guilty of it, is we want to do it ourselves because then we can claim success. But the greatest success is when you have that long-term success and you've involved everybody in the community, and that's what you've just seen
Did
in
you
Phoenix.
see that too, Wayne? A lot of
Oh.
fractionalization, I guess is that the word?
Well, I mean, and that's what attracts me so much to all of these projects, and especially this one. As Mayor Gordon said, they had 800 citizens on an advisory council, and it wasn't just one of these where, oh, I got my name on a council, and it doesn't really mean anything. 800 people who were involved in different aspects of this, either publicizing it or finding out about it or supporting it or being in the campaign. They felt like their voices were being heard and they had buy-in. I think that's really important. The other thing, and Bob mentioned this, is you got to have the business community, the educators. When you talk about, well, don't we have UT downtown? Don't we have part of the law school downtown, and we have a little bit of USF? But there are things that are win-wins for all of those folks that they could be doing together. And what they've done, like they have Arizona University and Arizona State, and working together in the same sort of buildings and campuses doing all biomedical stuff. And, you know, I mean, they're traditional rivals. If they played in football, they'd be on other sides of the field. But they've all found a way to come together on those specific projects. And it does need to come up from underneath so that those people have buy-in. And I don't think any one politician can sit there and dictate. Everyone get to the table and we're going to force a solution. There is a spirit of cooperation that has to happen across all of those strata.
We tried something like this in Tampa when we had that committee in '99, didn't we?
The visioning process.
Yeah, a visioning process. But they felt at least virtually ignored.
Yeah.
At the end.
And I'm not
They
sure
were more ticked off at the political people for
Because
bringing them together.
The
They
political
came up
people
with an
didn't
idea.
bring them together, though. It was
Oh, who brought
citizens,
them?
and the political people didn't buy in.
They didn't
No,
buy in.
they
That's what happened. Everybody's got to start together and finish together, and even if the political people aren't really satisfied with the ultimate response, everybody's bought into the
back.
system.
Oh, yeah.
This is what we wanted. It may not be exactly what I wanted as the mayor or something else, but this is what the community wanted, so we're all going to get behind it. That didn't
So
happen
they-
in '99.
No, they should have come back.
Meals for Kids actually is food that goes home on Friday afternoons with certain children for use over the weekends. And it was started at the request of teachers who were seeing hunger in the classroom. Hunger for a child is like a car running out of gas. And it caused a lot of problems in the classroom. They weren't able to study, they weren't able to take their tests, they were disagreeable, they had headaches, they had stomach aches, just all kinds of things caused by hunger. If you wanted to sponsor a school, we would purchase the food and bring it to you, and you would pack it, and probably someone at your organization would take it once a month to the school for distribution. And it's up to the teachers or the counselors to get it to the children on Friday. We don't know who the children are. That's part of the program. It's between the counselor and the child. It's that private. And
This is a program that we could
This is an
replicate right
interesting
here.
program. How did they somebody decided, a school decided, these children
They
need more food or they're too disruptive.
And they're not getting it on the weekend, and they're not getting it home. And we have so many schools in Hillsborough County and in the state and in this nation where kids are on the school breakfast program, the school lunch program, because they can't afford, their families can't afford to send them to school with their lunch or pay for their lunch. And we know who those kids are. So it would be easy to really replicate this program right here in Hillsborough County, identifying the schools that really have the need, and then the community reaching out through various ways, businesses, individuals, organizations, and helping provide those youngsters who may not be getting good nutrition and meals over the weekend, sending home those meals with those kids. And we could do this one. I don't think this one would be terribly tough to put together.
I mean, that's what...
Who's paying for this?
That's why this is, you know, some of it comes from federal funding, some of it comes from state funding, and some of it is philanthropy and charitable giving. It's one of those combination things. It's done by the charitable clearinghouse organization in that community, and that's actually who that woman is. She's the head of that organization. And what jumped out of the page at me when I saw this project was just what a no-brainer it is, how simple it is. Put extra food that people have, and you can go out and buy it, or you can have it donated. You can use sort of the Harvest America model, or the
Second
the
Harvest.
food Second Harvest model. You can use all of those kind of things, but in the end, it has no bureaucracy at all. There is no application form. There's no means testing. Everybody knows who these kids are. The kids know, the teachers know, the counselors know. And if they identify those kids, they put food in their backpack on Friday when they go home, and that way they have nutrition, because in school they get a free breakfast and they get a free lunch, but then they spend the whole weekend going hungry. It indirectly teaches parents over the weekend maybe better things to eat, and it helps the whole family out. You're helping, the ripple from it is tremendous by the simplest idea to do. And I don't know why every community in America can't do that.
Louise, it's interesting, and it's part of what we struggle with here in Tampa is a sense that we have a responsibility for those less fortunate than us, and that if we're going to grow together and if we're going to succeed together, that means everybody has to succeed. And part of that is we're not sure who we are and what we're going to be when we grow up. We're not sure what direction we're headed as a city. I mean, we're South Tampa, we're West Tampa, we're East Tampa, we're North Tampa. We're not Tampa. We aren't as good about looking out for all of Tampa as we are about our own little parochial interest. And so part of that is, developing an identity, understanding that we're all in this together, understanding that we can't leave anybody behind, and then moving forward. And moving forward, recognizing that every time we help one of these kids, we help our community. And, one of those kids may grow up to be a Rhodes Scholar. One of those kids may grow up to be the mayor. But we can't leave anybody behind.
Well, and one of the things that always intrigues me is it's quite amazing if you're in public office or you're an administrator or whatever, how people respond when you just ask. The simple fact of asking. So many times people forget that they can ask for something, and somebody out there might be responsive. Something like this, food for kids over the weekend so that they can be good students come Monday morning and they can teach their families and everything. Really, it not only helps the kids, it helps the community, it helps in every possible way. It helps that family, and it's something that this community, I believe, would respond to. But you have to ask, and you have to get the right coalition together and get everybody, once again, to buy into this. This is something that the community needs, and you go out and you ask.
So a lot of times the ask doesn't happen because there's an assumption made
that people
they
won't
may
respond.
say no, but
How could you
it is
say
true.
no to food for youngsters?
Right, especially if there's federal funds to help
Sure.
you out with it, and state funds, and then
Yeah.
probably people in town, like maybe even the fast food franchise owners.
Yeah,
would
and
be
you're combating
willing to do
obesity, and
it.
you're doing the ripple effect is just enormous.
Absolutely. And the typical government reaction to this would be, well, we need food on weekends, and we have this federal funding, so we're going to create a place and hire people to cook the food and do the
that's not
meals
it.
and do all of this, and then people will come there, and you build this giant infrastructure, and it's just so simple. Send some food home.
Oh, the
because,
difficult thing is when you send
you
it
know-
to government is
Oh, yeah.
the first $3 million goes to creating
Exactly.
the program.
Exactly. I mean, and this
And
thing
then,
must have like
you're left
zero-
with $200,000 by food. or
It's really
something.
not that different from Meals on Wheels, which has
Right,
been in this
which is a
community for
great-
many,
Absolutely.
many years, helping senior citizens and people in need. You do the same thing for kids.
And that's where the faith-based community can be very
Yeah.
helpful in adopting
Yeah.
neighborhoods and schools. I mean, that's what they're there for. That's what their mission is. That's what their
That's
charism
what they
is.
used to be there for.
I think, but Louise, I think if you ask them, I think most of them yearn to return to what their values are, and part of their values are making sure no one gets left behind. To feed the hungry and to clothe the naked. I mean, that's part of a
I
Judeo-Christian
grew up
ethic.
like that.
Yeah.
Did you grow up like that,
Yes.
where you knew that, if there was a fire or trouble or whatever, you could run down to your church or synagogue or
Absolutely.
and they would help you out? Well, I think they abdicated that, gave it away to government. The churches close it. They're not even open during the night or around the clock or any of these.
Well, government
and
took
they
it.
stopped and they said, well, let's give it to government. And I think that was a huge error.
Let me just give you a quick example about asking. When I was the mayor, we had, in the Tampa Heights area, we had a survey done by the residents of what their problems were, and the number one problem was lighting. They had lighting, but they couldn't see the lights because that's an older neighborhood and the trees had obliterated the lights. So it came back to us and said, what can we do? And the city didn't have any money. It costs a lot to go out and trim trees. So I remember saying to the staff, why don't we just go through the phone book and look under tree trimming, and let's get a meeting together of the tree trimmers and see whether they'll help us out. And they looked at me like I was crazy. And in many respects, I am crazy about doing things. I'm not afraid to ask. But they did. And I'll never forget the meeting. We had the meeting, and all of them came. Every one of them volunteered to help. They went out on 2 Saturdays, and they were almost finished with the project. And all we did for them, we gave them Cuban sandwiches at lunchtime, and we gave them a T-shirt that said Tampa Heights Street Trimming or something. And they were thrilled to do it. And then Hurricane Andrew hit in South Florida. They all went to South Florida, but they finished the project after they came back from South Florida trimming trees. And they did it voluntarily, and the neighbors were thrilled, and the public safety was better for it and everything. But you have to ask, and you have to kind of make people feel like it's a good thing to do.
And you think that's going to be true for Meals for Kids. All right, we have another one I think we have 2 or 3 people speaking for different projects in Indiana.
It's really a program that we primarily do through our Parks and Recreation program, and really inculcate all of the issues about healthy eating, healthy lifestyles, exercise, in all the activities we do in Parks and Recreation. So we work with our kids to help them make good eating choices, to learn lifelong activities that can keep them fit. And we said it really fit in with the culture that we're trying to promote in the city of South Bend with our Riverwalk trails, with bike lanes that we're putting in throughout the city. In city government itself, we have a health and wellness program. We've been reducing our health care costs, and so it was a natural fit for us and with our Parks and Rec department, because they do such a great job with kids, providing opportunities for them to make good choices in their lives. They're learning to enjoy themselves, and finding the benefits of all of that activity really spreads into other ways in life. You know, when you're feeling good, you feel good about yourself, you're able to study better, you make better decisions in your life, so it really all fits together in a great way. But as we do more and more, I think people are seeing that you know, if we can keep our health care costs down, as we provide these great kinds of opportunities for youth and families in our community, that it makes South Bend a great place to live.
We really emphasize just the small things that they can do in their life to make big changes and cut down on calories and burn those calories that they're intaking. The most important thing is the screen time that so many kids are behind computers today. And we really see that kids are not active. So what we try to do is really engage them in regular activities that we have taken the traditional concept and we include the whole team to engage in that activity. Then we work with the parents themselves and we bring them in and we try to just show them different things that they can do within their homes to make changes on food choices, family activities of getting out after they eat and taking a walk in the neighborhood, or a bike ride. And along our river walk, we put up signs that would say to people, if you would walk from this to this point, you will burn X amount of calories. And I think the amazing part about that is people really don't realize when they're getting out and walking what a short distance you know, that they would have to go, that they could really burn some calories.
We have a lot of nutritionists and doctors and nurses who can go in and do some of the testing and working with the Parks and Recreation program. The payback is amazing. We see childhood diabetes and adult diabetes rapidly increasing in our community, just like we see it reflected in the nation. And so this involvement and this engagement with the children and with the families, we believe we'll have healthier citizens in the future.
So we just heard from the South Bend mayor and a couple of program heads on what they're doing, which sounds like a really pretty interesting program: nutrition, diet, exercise.
Yeah, they're a pilot for the federal program, which has now been rolled out maybe in a dozen or so cities. They were one of the early pilots for it. It's called We Can: Ways to Enhance Children's Activity and Nutrition. I have to read that because I haven't memorized all of those things yet. Like, they target kids ages 8 to 13. You know, and they teach them how to exercise and have fun and stay active, and they teach them how to eat right. But the first person you saw was the mayor of the city, and then their Parks and Rec person. They've involved Notre Dame in that, because that's South Bend, Indiana, is the home of Notre Dame University. And they've involved the last person that you saw. She is with the local hospital, and they operate sort of a body museum, if you consider like what Mosey has when it does like, you know, body exhibits or things. And so you can go there and be inside inside a body, and the kids get to learn about bodies. And so they took all these elements that were already in the city. I mean, we ran a picture of their, they have one of those water parks, that the little kids run through the fountains and things. And we have all those kind of things, but they're not integrated and not then given an underpinning of, let's teach kids a few lessons while they're staying active about the value of activity. Let's teach them a little bit about, hey, eat this and not that, because it has ramifications. And so there's just little lessons. This isn't anything where they sat down all the kids in South Bend and said, okay, kids, listen up. Here's what you should do to be healthy. They just made it all work from volunteer level up through government, through different things. And it was a very cool project, I think.
There's no reason why we couldn't replicate that. I mean, we have more health here. I mean, more health is involved in things like gun safety and some of the other things. But finding a way to marry the academic institutions with, for example, our sports teams. I mean, what better place and better role models for our professional athletes or college athletes than to be involved in something like this and to be a living, breathing example to these kids of what you can achieve if you take care of your body.
I thought I saw something like 2 or 3 weeks ago happening in Hyde Park. In fact, I sent my son and wife and grandchild to it. It was for little children. It was activity, and they did it right in Hyde Park Village. I can't remember the name of it. It was some little program aiming to start based on little kids learning to do activities rather than sit in front of either a computer or a TV.
Well, I was having this conversation with somebody today who's another young parent like I am. I mean, the days when we all grew up where our parents would cut us loose, particularly in the summertime, tell us to be home when the street lights came on.
Right.
We were barefoot, we were out in the woods or out in the playgrounds all day long and never worried about a thing.
You couldn't go home.
You wouldn't
go outside and play, and you find
Stay
something
outside.
to play. Stay out there.
Yeah.
Now, if my kids are in the front yard of our house and we live in a relatively safe neighborhood, I'm out there watching. And so the alternative for them is TV and video games. So if you don't get them involved in sports or you don't teach them, how important this is, they're going to end up as slugs on a couch with health problems.
Yeah, and the ideas really they need to percolate up from the people. And so if you're watching this, for instance, you say, oh, those are great ideas. You can't wait for any government to come along and say, hey, yeah, we'll start this up. I mean, these are ideas you see and people in other communities saw, and they took up to whether it was business or government or the university or whatever that they needed. I mean, every university, there's tons of health interns that need service hours, and every high school kid now needs service hours. There's so much you can do. I wrote some ideas. When I was thinking about this idea, I said, hey, close the Bay Shore in Tampa once a month for community walks. Bike through downtown and Old Northeast and St. Pete along safe routes. Public awareness campaigns done by the local celebs, the ball players, the football players, the baseball players. Tampa Bay's Biggest Loser competitions. Different cities, try to lose the most weight. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can put together in programs like this, but it's got to come from people going, hey, this is a great idea, and they tell a friend, and then they sort of get a group together, and then they go search out, who do we need to know at USF who can help us, and who do we need to know at the city who can help us. That's the tough thing. I think that's where government can be very proactive, not in doing everything for everybody, but in providing sort of a clearinghouse or a conduit. If you got a good idea, the government should have somebody who's like, I put people together. If you have a good idea and you're a citizen, you should have somebody that you can go to and say, here's my idea. And say, you know what? You should talk to this person here and that person there. You all get together, and then you bring it up when the idea is.
How are we going to have something like this, though, when our county is talking about closing parks down a couple of days a week, even?
Well, one of the things,
unbelievable.
One of the things that struck me, I watched most of the presentations at the All-America City. There was one city that won that I don't think we have any footage over, Richmond, Indiana. And one of the goals of the National Civic League and the All-America City Awards is to make sure kids are involved in sustainability of programs so that they go on to the next generation. Richmond, Indiana had about 35 people who came to make their presentation, 30 of whom were young people. All of the adults sat back and let the young people make the presentations. And the programs that they shared, that they won with, were all youth-oriented programs that the kids had started. So if you're out there and you're watching, it doesn't matter how old you are, if you've got a good idea. I mean, one of those programs was that there were kids who saw a need to help other kids and mentor them, so they had a third grade reading program that the kids started. And that program continues today, and it grows, and all the third graders get help from the bigger kids in learning how to read. And don't you always look up to the bigger kids? You know, you want to be like them, so you want to read like they do. That's just the way it ought to work. Everybody helping everybody, and it is a village.
Wayne, an interactive whiteboard, normally called a smart board, is an interactive board that engages students in the learning within the classroom. And we purchased about 5 of those 2 or 3 years ago, and we did some studies, individual classrooms, and really found out that the students who were involved in this type of learning with the technology were able to enhance their skills, and students in inclusive classrooms with special needs children increased student achievement by as much as 40 to 50% by the end of the school year. So these smart boards allow a teacher to monitor the students' progress, keep the students engaged, and also pull information from the different websites, educational websites, and align it with the goals and objectives of the standard course of study from the state of North Carolina. They can actually save this work, download it, and then students who are absent can actually get this information and use it to help them, you know, get their work when they're absent. In our system right now, we will have every classroom, which is about 140 classrooms. We were fortunate enough, our community helped us raise $2.4 million about 4 years ago to get a state-of-the-art high school that has about 68 classrooms there. We were able to put smart boards in all of those classrooms. So that left our children at the high school with smart boards, but then, you know, we felt like that we really needed, in order for our children to become globally competitive, we needed to emphasize that at the elementary and the middle school level. So that was our grassroots effort, to make sure that all of our children, pre-kindergarten through 12th grade, were able to have these smart boards and be exposed to this technology. So when they go out into the world of work or into their colleges and universities, they will be able to be competitive with the other students.
How'd you convince the businesses to get on board and make this kind of an investment, really?
Well, one thing that we did, we got the idea to do Dancing with the Stars, and Dancing with, of course, that's a very popular television show, and we were able to include our community. We had 24 couples. We tried to pair people up that were from all aspects of the community. It was probably the most phenomenal event that I have ever been a part of, and I think our people in Clinton will tell you it's probably the most phenomenal event that's ever taken place in the city of Clinton. It was a total community effort. Our businesses came in, our newspaper published about $25,000 worth of advertisement for it. Our cable company actually televised it live throughout our county. We had restaurants on the big screen TVs. People were watching it at restaurants. We just involved everybody, and there was so much excitement in our city that it was just unbelievable. And our community is a great community, and our community is always willing to help, and they step up to the plate. When we as a city school system calls on our community, they always step up and they always hit home runs for us.
This is a community that was not designated one of the All-America cities, but they had some great programs. But the thing that was the most amazing about this, every community had, Tampa had like 80 people. Of course, we live here, so people didn't have to travel. Most communities had 20, 15, 35, whatever. In Clinton, North Carolina, because it's a small community and it's not a wealthy community, they couldn't bring a lot of people. But the mayor of that city, who was really quite sharp and made the presentation, he came by himself and made the presentation for his community on all 3 of the programs, and was totally versed in every one of these programs that really were quite good. And he just blew everybody away, because the fact that he would come by himself and make the presentations and really stand up for his community at a time when people couldn't afford to come with him and everything, really said so much. He had high fives all the way around, even though they didn't win. So it's a great effort no matter what. and it shows what a community can do, even if it can't really afford to come and show their stuff.
But these whiteboards couldn't have been cheap.
Whiteboards were great.
The whiteboards were not cheap, and you know what? They went out and they got businesses to chip in, and they used some of their existing money. But what I loved about this, look, we have some whiteboards in Tampa schools and in Hillsborough County schools, but these folks have put them in every single classroom. Now they're a smaller community, sure, but that also means they have less resources. So it's not, it's not any less heroic because they have a few fewer classrooms, but they recognize the importance of it. And what the boards let the teachers do is they write on it. It's automatically captured for the students to look at. It's it just isn't ephemeral like the chalk was. The chalk is gone, but they can also feed computer lessons onto the boards from laptops and things, and it's just a great high tech. The kids are much more engaged, and when he talked about the success rates, they have seen in third grade classes, going from 60% of the kids passing proficiency levels to in the high 90% after they use these whiteboards because the kids think they're cool.
Wow, cool. We're going to watch our own presentation next, I think. It's Mayor Pam.
Well, it's a point of civic pride. And I think you could see that on the faces of the people who were part of the delegation today. These were people who work in civic associations in East Tampa and along 40th Street and in the Sulphur Springs community. And they have a lot of pride in the city of Tampa. And that's one of the hallmarks of our city, is that people love the city of Tampa. They like living here, they feel good about their city, and they like to get engaged and involved. I've seen a lot of it during my past 6 years as mayor. I mean, I'm often amazed. I'll go to East Tampa to give a talk, 100 people. You don't get that in a lot of communities. A lot of times, a lot of people complain about apathy. We are not an apathetic city. We are a city that's very engaged, and we care about a lot of issues. And I think we saw that today, that the people up on stage, they were volunteers. They didn't have to participate in this. They've taken time to practice and to work on the script and work on songs, and it really was pretty cool, wasn't it? We're in a time of transition. The old days, first of all, of just looking to government to solve problems is so old-fashioned. I mean, the old days of saying, oh, I have an idea, I think I'll ask government to fund it, I think I'll ask government to do it. That's just no more. And the old days of government just kind of ignoring problems and hoping that they'll just go away on their own, that no one will ever pipe up and say anything about it, and just keep putting people off, those days are gone too. What we've tried to embrace during my administration is a really meaningful partnership, not lip service, not just saying it, but a real partnership, so that when I go to a town hall meeting and I answer questions, I know the names of most of the people in the audience, and yet we're the nation's 54th largest city. So we have that connection, a real connection with the people we serve. And that's the only way you get anything done. I mean, you look at East Tampa, the East Tampa Partnership, and the 13 neighborhoods that make up East Tampa. There's no way we would have enjoyed the success that we've enjoyed in East Tampa without that relationship. It wouldn't happen. You just don't go into a community and try to change it. The community has to change from within.
Mayor Pam Iorio presenting, and I think what she presented were the projects in Sulphur Springs, a holiday event, 40th Street project, some other road, East Tampa road projects. These were good, and it looks like there's some return to the program on the drug crime fighting street, the Quad Squad. Mm-hmm. But they're calling it another name, right? Operation something other.
No, still the
that's
Quad
it.
Squad.
It's the same
Still
thing.
the Quad Squad.
Okay, so those were good programs that we have the mayor doing, but what are your comments about
all those are
what
important.
Tam's
I think
doing?
they were important projects, but I don't think they were at the level of citizen involvement that all
like
of the
a
others.
Paint Your Heart Out.
No,
yeah,
no, that all the other cities that
Okay.
that won, where they were more grassroots, developed by the community, where you had 800 people participating, as we heard in Phoenix.
Right. Oh, that's true.
Yeah, they were more public works kind of projects and traditional government projects, as opposed to projects that really started from the bottom up and were grassroots driven.
Which is more the criteria the Civic League
Yeah,
award
I mean,
is what you're saying.
having the holiday
good project, but you needed to bring in
having
more
the
people.
holiday party for young people in Sulphur Springs is a great project, and businesses donate, and the neighborhood association participates, but it's having something for young people as opposed to young people doing something for themselves, which is kind of more engaging for the Civic League and the sustainable part of it, getting young people really involved.
How does the government or any group get the people involved like this? I mean, how did somebody get 800 people on a committee? How would you do it to get them all?
Oh, I think it might be easier than you think, Louise.
Really?
I think if you really reach out, and we've got such a vast community, might have more than 800. I mean, you've got the universities, you've got the school system, you've got the county, and goodness knows we ought to be engaging much more with the county than we are presently, and that's always been the case, unfortunately. You have senior citizens, and you have young people, and there's such a cross-section of this community. And we know who the neighborhood associations are. In the city of Tampa, you have almost 100 of them. The county, you have a vast number of them. And this internet that we have now, you can reach people that you never could reach before. I think if you really brought people together and said, we're going to decide what we want to be together. We're not going to tell you what you ought to be. We're going to decide what we want this community to be in 20 years from now, but we're all going to decide. We're all going to have a stake in it. We're all going to be decision makers in what we want it to be. I think you'd be really surprised at how many people would respond.
Now that you mention that, I went to one Civic League conference. Unfortunately, it was the day after the 2000 elections, and I was embarrassed every time I said, yes, I'm from Florida. But it took place in D.C., and it was the day after, and the then mayor of D.C., whose name I can't recall, got up and explained what he had done when he became mayor. He must have been between Marion and...
It was after Marion Barry, yes.
And he said what he did was call a meeting of all people the minute he got in to be mayor. And they poked fun at him in the newspapers for doing that. I was so touched by this guy. And a couple of thousand people actually showed up.
That's right.
And he said, okay, what do you want? And they started talking about what they want. I want more trees, I want more this, I want more that, I want that. And he made a list, and he said, okay, let's have another meeting. And then, so like 5,000 people came the next time, and he had it in, I guess, their convention center somewhere or whatever. And they actually changed the job descriptions of the people who work for government to fit what the people wanted, but they also asked the people what they wanted. So if they said, trees, I want more trees. How many did you want? Okay, I want 1,000 more trees. Okay, so Parks and Rec, how many can you put in with the budget we have? And that became part of their actual job description. And then they asked the citizens, how many can you put in? So everybody had to put in, but he called the meeting. I mean, he literally called the meeting.
You'd be surprised how many people
That's an
turn
amazement
out.
to me.
Louise, just look at how many people we are able to muster and put to work for the Super Bowl. I mean, it's thousands. Now, and that's a week-long occurrence. It's great for the city. We put on our best face. People take great civic pride in putting on their best face and being good hosts.
But they work for several years to get to that
Absolutely.
point, all these people.
Yeah.
That's true.
But I think if you are able to inspire people to believe in something bigger than just themselves, they're willing to do anything for you. And I think it almost...
Well, I guess Obama's our story for that one, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
He has inspired. He did inspire.
But,
a lot
mayors
of
can
people
do
to
it.
get
You
there.
can do it at the neighborhood level, at the micro level. I mean, you see it in schools with teachers inspiring kids. I think people are just looking to be asked, looking to be led, and given a mission to accomplish. And if that mission involves making this a better place, I think you'll find people in this community to stand up and say, put me in, Coach, wherever you need me.
Now, you interviewed everybody this time around, and the two of you have seen, well, all of you probably have seen other projects from other communities that became role model projects or pilot projects. What are some of the things, in your own estimation, that we could do or we should be looking at in Tampa to make it a better place?
The first thing I would do is I would encourage everybody who's watching this program or listening to go, if they have a computer, to go to www.ncl.org. That stands for the National Civic League. And when you get to that website, you can find out about all these programs and more that you've heard about today. You can see what the winners of this year's programs were, last year's programs. You can write and get even more information. And then you'll say, gee, I'd like to get involved with something like that. And maybe you'll be the one to start the program that feeds all the kids over the weekend, or whatever the case may be. That's a great first way to start. Find out what works. We don't have to create our own, somebody has the aha moment. We can steal a little bit from other communities.
Oh, sure,
we
sure.
stole Paint Your Heart Out from Pittsburgh.
Oh.
Somebody brought it to me, and I said, gee, that sounds like a great program, and I put some people together, and off they went, and it was done by the private sector mostly, but it was started in Pittsburgh. And that's how people can start programs. Don't think you have to go to bed at night saying, oh, well, what can I do? What can I do? Find out what others are doing and jump right in.
Louise, some of the best elected officials, and I don't say this in a pejorative sense, are the best thieves. Because what they do is they recognize that the best practices that work elsewhere, there are always parts of it that you can apply to your city. And so the smart ones are out talking to their fellow mayors or talking to their council members and looking at what's going on around the country, looking at organizations like the National Civic League, using them as a reference, finding those best programs, taking the pieces that work and putting them to work here. I mean, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, these problems are not unique to Tampa. And there are other people, smart people, who are working just as hard at it. And so, go steal the best ideas. Make them your own, add them your spin to it, and it's guaranteed success.
And I think there's two things. If you're a politician in the area, work on creating a culture of inclusion and listening to people that I think we certainly could develop more strongly here, and not just when there's a public hearing about a zoning item or those kind of things. To really create the ability for somebody who has an idea or has seen a good idea to bring it to a larger audience. I mean, there's probably people watching this today said, yeah, I've had this really great idea, but I wouldn't even know where to start and who would listen to me anyway. And so I think we have to create that culture. That's the job of the politicians and the community leaders and the business leaders.
We've had a couple of county commissioners who I could call 10 times and never get a meeting with.
Exactly. And
10 times, and then send an email for each time, and then label finally the email subject line. This is the 9th request for a meeting.
Yeah.
And then list all the other ones, and they're still not answering.
Well, Mayor Freedman said earlier, sometimes politicians get too hung up on, I want it to be my idea so I can take credit and have it on a mail piece when I run for re-election or whatever. And everyone needs to get over that. So that's the political, the leadership end of it. At the other end of it, for citizenry that people are watching, look, ask yourself today, what have I done for the civic health of my community today? What have I done for the civic health of my neighborhood today? One little thing. What have you done? Because you owe it. It is your responsibility as a citizen to be concerned about the larger body civic. And we don't teach our kids civics anymore, and civics isn't cool, and it's not sexy to be concerned about your community. That's sort of just where we are in the 21st century, and we need to change that. And so we need to get back to where that's valued.
I think we have probably only a couple of minutes left, and there might be another thought you have to add, and I'm just gonna, I got 5 left, so I'll give you each a minute. Start with you, Bob.
Well, I mean, certainly in Tampa's case, I mean, we're at a pivotal point. Sandy will remember this when cities like Charlotte, Jacksonville, Orlando used to come here to see how we did things. I mean, we were the mega trend city. We were the city in the South that everybody talked about, the city in the South that was destined for greatness. And we've got to find our way back on that path. And part of that is a lot of the things that we've talked about today, building those coalitions, creating a culture that rewards civic involvement, being willing to put partisan and ideological differences aside. I mean, the fact that the city can't get along with the county and the county hates the city, and we don't talk to St. Petersburg and Clearwater. I mean, it's just totally dysfunctional, because ultimately we're all going to rise or fail as a region, and certainly as Hillsborough County, as the city and the county prosper. Because if one fails, the other one is destined to fail as well. And so, we got to put all this stuff behind us and sort of figure out not only where our place is on the international stage, but more importantly, a plan to get us there. And I think a lot of that can be gleaned from presentations like this, and part of it is just inherent leadership and willingness.
Cut out the sibling rivalry, I guess is what you're saying.
It's,
from
yeah,
the mother,
it's more
from
than
Mother
that.
Florida or whatever, something like that. Wayne?
You know, I think we've got this opportunity. There's this great discussion and probably a referendum in 2010 on rail transit, improved mass transportation, improved transportation hubs. You've got T. Barta working on this. You've got One Bay working on this. You have Mayor Iorio. It's one of her priorities to get this on the ballot. For the citizens, for the residents of Hillsborough County and Tampa, again, I think that gives you a great civic opportunity because you know these transportation lines and the rail lines and the improved bus systems are going to go to certain places. What's going to happen at those certain places? Do we want just well, whatever people want to build and do and just let it go and as long as it is within the zoning plan? Or do we really want to take this opportunity to say, look, if we're going to build sort of a new spine and structure to what our community is, maybe we ought to think about, hey, there ought to be a bunch of museums at this one, and maybe downtown isn't where we want to have a lot of college campuses, but what can we do with HCC in Ybor City? Can we turn that into an educational historic enclave, or and
so it's an opportunity to revisit.
It's an opportunity to revisit what you want your community to be in 10, 15, 20 years. What do you want it to be for your kids or your grandkids? Because those are the decisions that we make today as a community. And I would say don't wait for elected officials to necessarily make those decisions because they don't think in those big grand terms for the most part. You have to think that way.
Sandy?
I've always thought that elected officials, and I certainly include myself on occasion when I was in office, always are trying to just do what they can now because the really big picture, they're not going to be around for that project that's been conceived by the community, but they're not going to be able to claim victory 10, 15 years out because they won't be in office anymore.
And there must be too many emergencies right away
That's
anyway.
right. So I don't think we look long view enough what we really want to be. What I would say to everybody listening is really hold your elected officials to the fire. Feet to the fire. If they do something you don't like, even if they don't respond to you, email them, call them up, send them a letter, do whatever you can. Go down and fight City Hall, and everybody can fight City Hall. You can win and you can make a difference, but you've got to be heard. You've got to make your voice heard. So don't be afraid to yell and scream, and even if it's not met with good results or maybe no results at all, just keep on fighting. But you have to hold their feet to the fire.
Well, I know with that guy that I wrote that email to, this is my 9th request, he's no longer in office, so I'm delighted about that, and I'll be working towards helping the other people, helping some other people run against the other ones that didn't read, that don't give you a meeting, too. I'm so appreciate all of you coming down here, and we are a training facility, and we welcome all of you to come down here and take our training. We don't have all the equipment and all the staff we need, but we thank all the volunteers that are here today shooting this and being involved in their community by covering these kinds of events themselves. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Wayne. Thank you, Sandy, so much. And we hope you'll tune in next time. Thanks much.
What would happen to your pets if something happened to you? The ASPCA already has. They have everything that you need to know about emergency pet preparedness right on their website. And remember, there is no better friend you can have than a pet you adopt at a local animal shelter. If you love animals as much as I do, you will want them to have a long and happy life. Right, Chubby? Wow.